Joining me now, Scott Weldon. Scott's on the line. He's in Washington, D.C. Scott, a longtime Republican operative in Southeast Virginia politics. We got a couple of races going on there. Plus, we want to get his take on what is going on in Virginia on a statewide basis. Scott Weldon, good to have you with us, man. I'm live in Orlando.
Morning, John. How are you doing?
And never better. I finally got some sleep, so I feel better. Not my tale of woe, but I was up for, I think, 48 hours straight. I got up at 4 a.m. on some day to go to work. What was that, Monday? And I really didn't get I got no sleep until last night at midnight. So I don't know how many hours it is, but it's a lot of hours. And finally, I just crashed. But listen, big result in Virginia Beach last week. You said this was going to be, this had upset written all over it. Although you didn't predict it, you said it was going to be very, very tight. And then Jenny Kiggins defeating Carolyn Weems by a couple hundred votes. And Weems had everything going for her. She was picked by the Senate committee. She was recruited. They didn't give her any money. She was a school board member, elected official. She was on the ballot 7 times. But her campaign just nothing. I mean, it just fizzled. And Kiggins caught her at the wire. What did you make of that?
Well, I mean, this is not a shot against Carolyn. I think it's a testament to Jen. I mean, I think she's got a great background, a great bio, and she was able to raise and spend a little bit more money, which is important. And, you know, I knew it was going to be close, and as it got closer to Election Day, I started seeing signs that Jen was actually going to take it. So kind of an interesting thing. You go to the district with her background. And I think as a former pilot and Navy veteran, I think and a nurse, she's got a great shot at taking that seat in November.
Well, I think she's got to be the favorite there, Scott. I mean, you look at the Democratic nominee, Cheryl Turpin. She's very liberal. I mean, she's one step away from being an Ocasio-Cortez radical. She's a very liberal left-wing candidate in a conservative military district running against a former pilot. I really don't see Turpin winning this seat. I know they're going to spend a lot of money. But, you know, Scott, you ran the Wagner campaign in 2015, and I heard the same nonsense about Gary McCullum, and he was such a great candidate, and he was going to spend all this money, and he was a Cox executive, and this and that, and you guys crushed him. I think you beat him by 10 points. I mean, it was an amazing victory. So I think at the end of the day, this district is not going to be liberal, and that's what Turpin is. And so I don't see the Democrats picking this seat up, and I try to call this stuff like I see it, but I don't see that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few things happening there. I mean, messaging and tone, and obviously with the shooting a couple weeks ago, it adds a whole new dynamic to the race. But I think Jen has the experience and the ability to kind of translate that into crossover voting. And veterans, especially in Virginia Beach area and across the country, tend to be a little bit more independent thinking, independent-minded. And I do think they'll kind of see right through the liberal, facade of Cheryl Turpin and vote for Jen.
Well, I think so. So I've got Kiggins winning that. Let's get to the Sturdivant race against Hassan. That is probably, other than the Dick Black seat, which the Democrats are expected to take, let's get to that race. Internal polls leaking again, right? Well, I don't know who leaks these things, but showing Sturdivant behind. We had one poll, somebody told me a month ago, had Sturdivant up by 10. Now he's behind by 5. So I don't believe any of them. But Hassan, a pretty good candidate. Sturdivant, a great candidate. But again, they're going to spend millions of dollars trying to knock him out because the Sturdivant seat and the race against Hassan is going to really determine who takes over the Senate in reality, because the Republicans are not going to win the Dick Black seat in my judgment. How do you see that race?
You know, I think Sturdivant is a great candidate. I remember 4 years ago, nobody thinking that he had a shot watching on election night, and I think it was Andrew Lamar and those guys kind of keeping me in the loop on some of that stuff. And I think there was they were very scared going into Powhatan County, and then Powhatan showed up and kind of just swept it away. I think you're going to see strong turnout in areas like that. I think you're going to see similar tactics to what they pulled a few years ago over there. Bloomberg's group was heavily involved in that race, but I do think that Sturdivant has a record to run on. He has proven himself to be a great candidate and a great conservative and a great politician. So I do think that it's going to be a close race. Absolutely, there's no question about it. But I do think I'd give the edge to Sturdivant on this one.
I think so. I mean, last time I remember he did pull it out in Powhatan County, and I remember something that Michael Young told me, who was on Tommy Norman's staff. He was part of the the team that was running these races. Now he's with the Republican Governors Association. And I'll never forget something that he told me. He said, in the South, sheriff's races are like the World Series of politics. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He said, yeah, sheriff's races in the South, when they're very competitive, you get an enormous turnout. And he said that in Powhatan County that year, this is why he predicted Sturtevant was going to win. He told me he was going to win. He said that, I don't know, there was some major sheriff's race with like 5 candidates. And, of course, that's a very conservative area. And so they had this massive turnout. That's what he said would put Sturtevant over the top. So I never forgot that when he told me that, Michael Young. What are some of the other races that you're going to be looking at and involved in? By the way, we're with Scott Weldon. Scott, a longtime political operative in Virginia Beach. He's run the Frank Wagner campaign. He's run the Scott Weldon. This is Scott Weldon. He's run the Scott Taylor campaign. Now he's involved on Capitol Hill. What are some of the other big races here that you're looking at, Scott?
You know, there's some of these areas that the Democrats are pretty heavily focused on, and obviously there's implications for 2020 moving forward, and that's really where they're focusing on places like Virginia Beach. So keep an eye on the 7th and the 8th District. You're definitely going to see a lot of money and resources poured into there to try and basically set up the 2nd District, and you're going to see some stuff up in the 7th, I'm sure, outside Sturtevant's race, and obviously Dick Black and he's in the D.C. market. So I would absolutely pay attention to all those Senate races. I mean, obviously, with the redistricting lines on the House, you've still got some interesting races to watch. I'm going to say my old boss, David Yancey, I'm going to give him a shout-out. That's going to be a fun one to watch. Always, Newport News is interesting place to watch politics. And with the sheriff's race a couple years ago, it really helped drive turnout up, just like Mike Young had said. So I think that there's definitely some fun ones in the House, but obviously watching that redistricting was disappointing to watch the court's decision to have somebody out of state kind of dictate to us kind of how the district lines should be drawn, and I think that's not a good sign for the House. But I think there's absolutely some fun races to watch in the House as well. I'd watch Chris Stolle. It got drawn into a little bit of a plus D, but he's a great candidate, great message, has a lot of support in the community. So I think that's going to be a fun one to watch as well.
Well, they've got a one-shot deal, basically. The Democrats are going to have to win this time because, the House and Senate voted for the One Virginia plan, which is to change the district lines and put a bipartisan commission in charge of it and also a public commission in charge of it. And that passed overwhelmingly in the House and Senate. It's expected to pass again. But it'd be interesting if the Democrats take over, if they just block that bill and say, no, we prefer the maps we have now. So that's going to be a battle. But they got one shot here because if the Democrats don't win the House right now with these new lines, they're never going to win it, in my judgment. Because I think they may have reached the apex they're going to go. But I don't think they beat Kirk Cox. I don't think they beat Chris Jones. They're not going to beat Stolle. I can't. Look, I hate to predict against your former boss, David, but I don't see
get in there, by the way, too.
That seat.
I mean, I think candidates like Garrison are going to be the wave of the future for us, and I'd love to see young, energetic candidates get in there.
I know. Well, that sounds good. Now, tell me about the race for Congress in the 2nd District. It doesn't look like Scott Taylor is too interested, even though he's been exonerated with Signature Gate. Doesn't look like he's too fired up about running for that seat again. He might run for U.S. Senate. He might be an ambassador. Who are the leading candidates now for that seat to run against Elaine Luria, who, by the way, I believe in the 2nd District, with Trump on the ballot and a good candidate, she loses. So who's out there?
There's a couple of people out there that we've heard rumblings about. Former President of Senior Corps Tom Knox, I know, is mulling it about. I know Pat Cardwell's going to look at a run again, and I know there's a couple other candidates out there that probably don't have kind of
Pat
anything
Caldwell?
on the radar.
Are you serious? Pat Caldwell? Are you serious? Mm-hmm. I mean, let's just run Manny Moe and Jack. Okay, well, who is give me a serious candidate. Pat Caldwell's not a serious candidate. Give me a serious candidate in that district.
And personally, I think having a veteran run, having a candidate with a strong background in either business or in the military is positive for that district. So I think that there's definitely, and I do think Luria has kind of voted in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi, just like we said she would. So I think that there's
she's horrible.
A gap there between what voters want in the district and what they're getting. So I do think that there's an opening there that I think, and hopefully we get some good candidates that start lining up. And I know some people were waiting for Scott's decision. And listen, if there's anything Scott Taylor does, it's not be boring. So I think that that's something that, and I know he's still kind of mulling about kind of what he's going to do, but I'm sure he'll kind of come to the right decision on this over the next few weeks.
All right, Scott Weldon, thanks for being with us. You got to find us a candidate in the 2nd District because you start throwing names out like Pat Caldwell, and it's like a comedy show. And then I don't know who Tom Knox is, but I never heard of the guy. I mean, give me a candidate down there who can win, because I think a strong candidate and Trump on the ballot and a rally in the 2nd District, Lori is a dead duck. And the thing about Gloria Scott, which is why I don't think she can win if there's a good candidate, she refuses to talk to people. I mean, she lives in a bubble. She's petrified of going on any media that is not going to ask her if she'd like a cold soft drink or a hot cup of coffee, and she's comfortable. She's petrified to death to talk to people. If she jumped in my lap tomorrow and called me daddy, I wouldn't know who the hell she is. She doesn't reach out to the other side. She doesn't talk to Republicans or independents. And that is a prescription in a district that is not a Democrat district to lose. And coupled with the fact her voting record is 100% libo. So, I mean, she might as well be AOC. I mean, there's no difference. I don't think she wins, but you're not going to beat her with the names I just heard. Come up with a candidate and let me know who it is so we can get him on our show. Pat Caldwell, you have got to be kidding me. Scotty, I got to roll, man. Thanks for being with us. Quick word from our sponsors.
John.
I'll be right back. Scott Weldon, thanks, man.